I can still feel the weight of his words, heavy in the pit of my stomach, every time I think about them. You're too pretty to be my daughter. They had always stung. But over time, they became something else, like a jagged stone lodged under my skin, too deep to ever truly dislodge. My father never let me forget that I wasn't his. Not by blood, not in any way that mattered to him. He called me a reminder of my mother's infidelity, always looking for cracks in her story, always searching for proof of a betrayal that never happened. I spent my childhood wishing for the kind of love that would overlook the smallest imperfections. But my father couldn't see me any other way. I wasn't a daughter, I was evidence. For years, my mother's tears were just part of the backdrop. I watched her hold it all together, watched her hide her broken heart beneath smiles that never quite reached her eyes. He was relentless. And she was silent, a prisoner to a man who couldn't love her without suspicion. But I was her daughter, and I had to protect her, even when my own heart was breaking. The night it all changed, I was 28 years old. I sat across from my father at a family dinner that was supposed to be about wedding plans. Instead, he slid a piece of paper across the table like he was dealing a card in a poker game. A consent form for a DNA test. Take the test, he said, his eyes cold, calculating. If you're mine, I'll walk you down the aisle. If you're not, I won't be there. I didn't storm out. I didn't raise my voice. I took the paper, folded it carefully, and slipped it into my bag. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. But something inside me, something quiet, told me that maybe, just maybe, the truth would change things. That it could erase the years of accusations, of being told I was less than a daughter. I was wrong. The truth didn't change anything. It destroyed everything. And then it gave me something I never expected. A sister I never knew I had. Before I tell you what happened when the test results came back, I need you to do three things. First, hit that subscribe button. This story gets absolutely wild, and if you're not subscribed, YouTube might not show you how it ends. Second, smash that like button if you've ever been told, directly or indirectly, that you don't belong. Third, drop a comment below telling me, have you ever known, somewhere deep, that something was wrong, but couldn't let yourself see it? Because I have. And I'm about to tell you exactly what happened when the truth finally broke through. Let's go. To understand why my father's words cut so deep, you need to understand the house I grew up in. It was a pristine colonial in the suburbs, the kind of house that looked perfect from the street, with its manicured lawn and polished brass mailbox. But perfection was a performance. Behind the closed doors there was rot. My father, Gerald Townsend, sat at the head of every dinner table like a king surveying his kingdom. He had the kind of confidence that came from never being questioned, never being challenged. He was a man who believed his version of reality was the only version that mattered. My mother, Diane, sat next to me, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes always somewhere else. She had learned, over 28 years of marriage, that silence was safer than speech, that tears were safer than truth. And my brother, Marcus, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, kept his head down, his fork hovering over his plate like he didn't know how to be part of this family. He never defended me, he never spoke up, he just existed in the space between my father's cruelty and my mother's silence. I was the one who didn't fit. Blonde hair, blue eyes, physical proof, my father believed, of my mother's betrayal. Never mind that genetics are strange, that children can look like grandparents or great aunts or strangers on a bus. My father had decided the story, and he stuck to it. You look just like her, he'd say, meaning my mother. But it wasn't a compliment, it was an accusation. I learned early that I could never be enough. I could get straight A's, not enough. I could win scholarships, not enough. I could stay quiet, stay small, stay invisible, not enough. Nothing I did could change the color of my hair or the shape of my eyes. Nothing I did could make him see me as his daughter. It was a Tuesday in October when everything shifted. My mother had planned a casual family dinner to discuss wedding details. I was engaged to Nathan, a man who looked at me like I was the only person in the world. We'd been together for 3 years, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen. I arrived at my parents' house early to help my mother in the kitchen. She was making her famous lasagna, the one she only made on special occasions. But her hands were shaking as she layered the noodles. Mom, what's wrong? She wouldn't look at me. Nothing, sweetheart, just tired. I knew it was a lie. I'd spent my whole life reading between the lines of her silences. By the time the lasagna was ready, the whole family had gathered. My father at the head of the table. Marcus beside him, avoiding eye contact. My mother across from me, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. And at the end of the table, an empty chair, the one that always felt like mine, even when I was sitting in it. Dinner was a performance. We moved food around our plates, made small talk about nothing. My father asked about Nathan's job, about the wedding venue, about the guest list. Normal questions, normal answers. Then, as my mother reached for the bread basket, my father cleared his throat. There's something we need to discuss. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. My mother's hand froze mid-reach. Marcus looked up from his plate. I felt Nathan's hand find mine under the table. My father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table toward me. It was a consent form for a DNA test. I've thought about this for a long time, he said, his voice flat, rehearsed. I'm not walking my daughter down the aisle until I know she's actually my daughter. The words hung in the air like smoke. Gerald, please. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Not tonight. Why not tonight? He didn't look at her. His eyes were on me. Torai's getting married in 6 months. If she's mine, I'll be there. I'll apologize for every doubt I've ever had. We'll put this behind us. And if I'm not? My voice came out steadier than I expected. He held my gaze. Then we both have our answer. I picked up the form. I read it slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch. I could feel my mother's eyes on me, could feel her willing me to refuse, to storm out, to do anything but engage with his cruelty. But I was done running. I folded the paper and slipped it into my bag. Thank you for the reminder, I said, standing up. I'll remember this. Nathan stood with me. We walked out without saying goodbye. In the car, I didn't cry. I just stared out the window at the house I'd grown up in, watching it shrink in the side mirror until it was just a dot of light in the darkness. He's been waiting 28 years to do this, I said quietly. Nathan squeezed my hand. What are you going to do? I thought about my mother's white knuckles, about Marcus's averted eyes, about all the years of silence, of smallness, of never being enough. I'm going to take the test, I said. And then I'm going to find out who I really am. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The days that followed blurred into a constant hum, like static on a radio that never quite found the right station. I went to work. I met with wedding vendors. I smiled at Nathan and pretended everything was fine. But the truth was always there, just beneath the surface, simmering quietly. I kept the consent form in my nightstand drawer, tucked under a pile of old photographs. Every night I'd pull it out and stare at it. Every night I'd put it back without signing. What are you afraid of? Nathan asked one evening, sitting beside me on the couch. I don't know. I leaned into him, letting his warmth steady me. Maybe I'm afraid he's right. Maybe I'm afraid he's wrong. Maybe I'm afraid of finding out that everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, sometimes the truth is the only thing that sets you free, even when it hurts. I know, I closed my eyes. I know. The next morning, I drove to the clinic. The building was sterile and white, the kind of place designed to feel clinical and safe. I filled out forms, handed over my insurance card, and waited in a room with fluorescent lights and outdated magazines. When the technician called my name, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It's just a cheek swab, she said gently. Open wide. I opened, she swabbed, it took 5 seconds. That's it? That's it, she smiled. Results in 2 to 3 weeks. I walked out of that clinic feeling like I'd just stepped off a cliff. The ground was still there, I could feel it under my feet, but I was falling anyway. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went through the motions of living, work, wedding planning, dinners with Nathan, but I was somewhere else. Every night I lay awake, my thoughts spiraling, my body frozen in a quiet panic. My mother called every few days. Her voice was different now, thinner, more fragile. She asked about the wedding, about Nathan, about nothing. She never asked about the test. I knew she was afraid. I knew she was waiting, just like me, for the other shoe to drop. Marcus called once. It was awkward, stilted, the kind of conversation two people have when they share DNA but not history. Dad's been quiet, he said. Good. He knows he went too far. He's been going too far for 28 years, Marcus. You just never noticed because it wasn't directed at you. Silence on the other end. Then, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work staring at a spreadsheet when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I stepped into the hallway to answer. Miss Townsend, this is Dr. Reeves from the genetic testing lab. Your results are ready. My heart stopped. Then restarted at double speed. I have a secure portal where you can view them, she continued. But I wanted to prepare you. The results are unexpected. What do you mean, unexpected? There's a lot of information in this report. More than just paternity. I'd recommend reviewing it with a genetic counselor, and possibly with your family. I hung up and stood in the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing above me, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Unexpected. More than just paternity. What did that mean? I drove straight to my mother's house. My mother was in the kitchen when I arrived, her hands submerged in soapy water, washing dishes that were already clean. A nervous habit. I'd seen it 1,000 times. Mom, she turned, drying her hands on a towel. Torre, what's wrong? I held up my phone. The test results came back. Her face went pale. She sat down at the kitchen table, her hands gripping the edge like she might fall. What do they say? I haven't looked yet, the doctor said. She said it was unexpected. That there's more than just paternity information. I wanted to look at it with you. My mother stared at me for a long moment, then she said something I'll never forget. I've been keeping a secret, Tori, for 28 years. I always told myself I was protecting you, but maybe I was just protecting myself. I sat down across from her. What secret? She took a deep breath. When you were born, there was a complication. A nurse took you for some routine tests, and when she brought you back, I don't know, something felt off. But the doctor assured me everything was fine. What are you saying? I'm saying I've always wondered, Tori. In the back of my mind, I've always wondered if you were really mine. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're not my mother? I don't know. Tears streamed down her face. I've never known for sure. And I was so afraid of finding out, of losing you, that I never pursued it. I told myself it didn't matter. You were my daughter in every way that counted. I sat there, the kitchen spinning around me, my mother's confession echoing in my ears. She wasn't sure I was hers. The woman who raised me, who protected me, who stayed silent for 28 years to keep me safe, she didn't know if I was her biological child. I opened the portal on my phone. The results loaded slowly, painfully slowly, and then I saw it. Maternal match 0%, paternal match 0%. I wasn't Gerald's daughter. I wasn't Diane's daughter. I was no one's daughter. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember walking into my apartment. I only remember Nathan's arms around me, holding me up as my legs gave out. Tora, what happened? What is it? I showed him my phone. He read the results in silence, his face shifting from confusion to shock to something I couldn't name. 0%, he whispered. How is that possible? I don't know. My voice was barely audible. I don't know who I am. We sat on the couch for hours, me curled into his side, him holding me without speaking. There were no words for this. No comfort that could reach the place where my sense of self had been ripped away. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I think we need to talk. I stared at the message, my mind too numb to process it. Another text followed. My name is Rachel. And I think I'm your sister. We met at a coffee shop 2 days later. I arrived early, ordered a latte I couldn't drink, and sat in a corner booth watching the door. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what to expect. A scammer, a crazy person, someone who'd seen my story online and wanted attention. When she walked in, I knew instantly that she was telling the truth. She had my hair, my eyes, my cheekbones. She moved like me, held herself like me. Looking at her was like looking into a mirror that showed me who I might have been if I'd grown up in a different life. She sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around her own coffee cup. You're Tori, and you're Rachel. We stared at each other for a long moment, then she laughed, a short, nervous sound. This is insane, right? This is actually insane. Yeah, I agreed. It is. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were documents, birth certificates, adoption papers, a DNA test of her own. I was adopted at birth, she said. My adoptive parents told me when I was 18. They gave me everything they had, my original birth certificate, the agency's contact info, everything. I've been searching for my biological family for 10 years. 10 years, 10 years of dead ends. Until last week when a private investigator I hired found something. A hospital record from the night we were born. Twins, delivered by C-section. One baby went to Diane Townsend. The other was placed in temporary foster care and eventually adopted out. I stared at her. Twins? Twins, she nodded. We're twins, Tori. Somewhere in that hospital, we got separated. You went home with Diane. I went into the system. I thought about my mother's story, the nurse taking me for tests, the feeling that something was off. It wasn't a mistake, it was a swap. Deliberate or accidental, I might never know, but the result was the same. Two babies, two lives, entirely different. I've spent my whole life feeling like I didn't belong, I said quietly. Like I was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes were wet. Me too, every single day. Rachel and I talked for hours that first day. We compared childhoods, families, wounds. She'd grown up with adoptive parents who loved her but never quite understood her. I'd grown up with a mother who loved me and a father who resented me. We'd both spent our lives searching for something we couldn't name. By the end of the conversation, we had a plan. My parents' 40th anniversary party was in 3 weeks. Gerald had planned a big celebration at the Fairfield Country Club, 300 guests, a sit down dinner, speeches. He wanted to show off, to perform the role of the successful patriarch one more time. I was invited, of course. I was still his daughter, at least in name. He didn't know about the test results. He didn't know what I'd discovered. And he definitely didn't know about Rachel. We could just show up, Rachel said, walk in together and watch his face. It would be satisfying, I agreed, but it wouldn't be justice. What would be justice? I thought about it. About 28 years of suspicion. About my mother's silent suffering. About the way Gerald had used me as a weapon against her, as evidence of a crime she never committed. I want him to know, I said slowly. I want him to know the truth in front of everyone. I want him to see that his cruelty destroyed this family, not my mother's supposed infidelity. And I want him to see you, the daughter he never knew existed, and understand what he lost. Rachel nodded. That's a lot, but I'm in. Rachel moved into my guest room. We spent evenings together, learning each other's stories, filling in the gaps of 28 years apart. She told me about her adoptive parents, kind people who tried their best but never quite understood her restless searching. I told her about Nathan, about the wedding, about the life I was building. She met my mother in secret at a coffee shop across town. I watched from a distance as they embraced, as my mother cried into Rachel's shoulder. Diane had been carrying this guilt for 28 years, the suspicion that she'd raised the wrong child, that somewhere out there, her real daughter was living a different life. Now she knew the truth, and she had both of us. Nathan was my rock through all of it. He never questioned, never doubted. He just held space for whatever I needed: rage, grief, hope, fear. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked the night before the party. Once you say it, you can't unsay it. I've been silent my whole life, I told him. I'm done being silent. The Fairfield Country Club was exactly as I remembered it: chandeliers, white tablecloths, the smell of expensive perfume and old money. 300 guests filled the ballroom, sipping champagne and making small talk about nothing. Gerald stood at the head of the room, holding court like the king he believed himself to be. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his hair slicked back, his smile wide and performative. My mother stood beside him, a frozen smile on her face, her eyes searching the crowd until they found me. I nodded at her. She nodded back. The signal? Rachel was already inside, seated at a table near the back, waiting for her cue. We'd planned it carefully. She'd enter after Gerald began his speech, after everyone was watching him, after the moment was perfectly staged. Marcus found me near the bar. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. Hey, listen, Torre, I know things have been weird with Dad, with the test, with everything. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for never speaking up, for never defending you. I looked at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. He wasn't the golden child anymore. He was just a man, trapped in the same house I'd escaped, still trying to please a father who would never be pleased. Thank you, I said. That means something. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying. Trying is a start. He nodded, then walked away. I watched him go, wondering if we'd ever be close, if there was enough time left to build something real. Then Gerald's voice cut through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted. 300 faces turned toward the stage. I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate 40 years of marriage. 40 years of building this family, this life, this legacy. He paused, letting the words land. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge my daughter, Torre, who's here with us tonight. I felt every eye in the room shift to me. I stood still, my face neutral. She's getting married in a few months, Gerald continued. And I want to say publicly that I'm proud of her. Whatever questions I've had in the past, they're behind us now. We're moving forward as a family. He smiled at me, that practiced, performative smile. I walked toward the stage. The crowd parted for me, sensing that something was happening, something not on the program. I climbed the 3 steps to the stage and stood beside my father. He looked confused, then annoyed. Torre, this isn't the time. I need to say something. I took the microphone from his hand. The room was absolutely silent. My father just said that whatever questions he's had are behind us, that we're moving forward as a family. I paused, letting the words settle. But I think before we move forward, we need to be honest about where we've been. I pulled a folded paper from my pocket and held it up. 3 weeks ago, at my father's request, I took a DNA test. He wanted to know if I was really his daughter before he walked me down the aisle. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw my mother in the front row, her face pale but steady. The results came back. I unfolded the paper. According to this test, I am not Gerald Townsend's biological daughter. Gasps, whispers. Gerald's face went white. But that's not all. I looked at my mother. According to this test, I'm not Diane Townsend's biological daughter either. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop 3 rooms away. I turned to the back of the room and nodded. Rachel stood up. She walked down the center aisle, her heels clicking against the polished floor, every eye following her. She reached the stage and climbed the steps to stand beside me. "This is Rachel," I said. "My sister, my twin. We were separated at birth 28 years ago. She was adopted out. I went home with Diane, and neither of us knew the other existed until last week." Gerald's knees buckled. He caught himself on the podium, but I saw it, the collapse of everything he had built, everything he had believed. "All these years," I continued, "my father accused my mother of infidelity. He used me as evidence of her betrayal. He made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family. And it was all based on a lie. A lie he created, nurtured, and weaponized for 28 years. I looked at Gerald. His face was gray, his mouth hanging open. "I'm not your daughter," I said quietly. "But that was never the problem. The problem was that you couldn't love me anyway. The problem was that you chose suspicion over trust, cruelty over kindness, your own ego over your family." I handed the microphone back to him. I hoped the truth was worth it. Rachel and I walked off the stage together. Behind us, the room erupted. Whispers, shouts, the chaos of 300 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Gerald stood frozen at the podium, the microphone dangling from his hand, his face a mask of shock and shame. My mother was waiting for us at the edge of the crowd. She wrapped her arms around both of us, pulling us close. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't fight harder. I'm so sorry I didn't look for you." "You raised me," I said. "You loved me, that's what matters." "And I'm here now," Rachel added. "That's what matters too." We stood there, the three of us, holding each other while the world fell apart around us. Marcus appeared at my elbow. His eyes were wet. "I didn't know," he said, "any of it. I should have known, but I didn't." "You know now," I said. "That's a start." Nathan found me a few minutes later, pulling me into a hug that lifted me off my feet. "You were incredible," he said. "Absolutely incredible." "I was honest," I corrected. "That's all." Gerald didn't speak to me for 3 months. He retreated to his study, to his golf course, to anywhere he could hide from the wreckage of his choices. My mother moved into the guest room. Marcus stopped coming to Sunday dinners. The family we'd performed for 40 years crumbled overnight. Rachel and I spent those months getting to know each other. We discovered shared mannerisms, the way we both tilted our heads when confused, the way we both laughed too loud at bad jokes. We discovered different upbringings, hers stable and loving, mine fractured but survivable. We discovered that family isn't just about blood, it's about choice. My mother found a therapist. She started speaking at dinner, sharing opinions, disagreeing with me and Nathan and Rachel. It was strange and wonderful, watching her emerge from the shell of silence she'd built around herself. Marcus showed up at my apartment one night with a bottle of wine and an apology that took an hour to deliver. It wasn't enough, it could never be enough, but it was a start. And Gerald? He called on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months to the day after the party. "I'd like to see you," he said. "If you're willing." I agreed to meet him at a neutral place, a coffee shop near my apartment. No crowds, no performances, just two people who used to be father and daughter. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. The arrogance that had defined him for so long was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I don't deserve it. But I needed to say to your face that I was wrong." "Wrong about what?" "About everything." He met my eyes. "About your mother, about you, about the way I treated you both for 28 years. I created a story in my head and I punished you for it. There's no excuse for that." I didn't say anything, I just let him talk. "I've started seeing a therapist," he continued. "I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, why I needed to believe the worst. I don't have answers yet, but I'm trying." "That's more than I expected." "I know." He looked down at his coffee cup. "I'm not asking to walk you down the aisle. I know I lost that right, but I'd like to be there, at the wedding, if you'll let me." I thought about it, about all the years of pain, about my mother's silent tears, about the way he'd used me as a weapon against her. "I'll think about it," I said. "That's all I can promise." He nodded. "That's more than I deserve." The wedding was small, just 50 people, held in a garden at the edge of the Whitmore estate. My grandmother's roses were in full bloom, their scent hanging heavy in the warm June air. Nathan stood at the altar, his eyes finding mine the moment I appeared. He looked the way he always looked when he saw me, like I was the only person in the world. My mother walked me down the aisle. She'd insisted on it, and I'd agreed without hesitation. She had earned that right, not through biology, but through 28 years of silent protection, of staying when leaving would have been easier, of loving me even when she couldn't love herself. Gerald sat in the second row next to Marcus. He didn't protest. He just watched, his face unreadable, as my mother placed my hand in Nathan's and stepped back to her seat. Rachel was my maid of honor. She stood beside me in a dress the same color as mine, her eyes bright with tears. We'd come so far in 6 months, from strangers to sisters, from separate lives to shared future. The ceremony was simple. Vows we'd written ourselves, promises we meant with our whole hearts. When the officiant pronounced us married, Nathan kissed me like we were the only two people in the world. At the reception, my mother danced with Rachel, then with me, then with both of us at once, laughing in a way I'd never heard before. Marcus gave a toast that was awkward and heartfelt and exactly right. Even Gerald, from his seat in the corner, managed a small smile. I found Rachel on the terrace later that night, looking out at the gardens. Hey, hey, she turned to me, her face soft in the moonlight. This is weird, right? Finding your twin at 28? The weirdest. But also kind of amazing. Yeah, I agreed. Kind of amazing. We stood there for a long moment, two women who should have grown up together, finally finding our way back to each other. What happens now? She asked. Now we live. I slipped my arm through hers. We figure out what it means to be sisters. We build something new. She nodded. I'd like that. A year after the wedding, I sat in my apartment, a new place, one Nathan and I had bought together, and looked through a box of old photographs. There were pictures of my childhood. Birthdays, holidays, school plays. In every one I was smiling. In every one my mother was beside me. In every one my father was somewhere else, behind the camera, or not there at all. I pulled out a photo of my mother and me at my 8th birthday party. She was crouched beside me, her arm around my shoulders, her smile reaching her eyes for once. I remembered that day. She'd made my favorite cake, invited my friends, decorated the living room with balloons. My father had been at work, or so she said. Now I wondered if he'd been somewhere else entirely. Avoiding us, avoiding me. I put the photo back in the box and pulled out another. This one was new, taken at our weekly family dinner 2 weeks ago. My mother, Rachel, Marcus, Nathan, and me all crowded around my grandmother's dining table. Gerald wasn't there. He'd been invited, but he'd declined. He was still working on himself, he said, still trying to figure out who he wanted to be. Maybe he'd get there, maybe he wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Rachel called as I was putting the box away. Hey sis, what are you doing? Looking at old photos. Oof, brave, I laughed. It's actually not as hard as I thought it would be. They're just pictures now, they don't have power over me anymore. That's growth, she said. I'm proud of you. Thanks, how are you? Good, work is good, I met someone. Really? Yeah, his name is David, he's a teacher. Very stable, very boring, very exactly what I need. I can't wait to meet him. Soon, I'm bringing him to Sunday dinner next week. Fair warning, he's allergic to cats. I'll warn Grandma. We talked for another hour, the way sisters do. About nothing, about everything. About the lives we were building, separately and together. When I hung up, Nathan found me on the couch, still smiling. Rachel's got a boyfriend? How did you know? Because you have the same smile you get when you talk about her. He sat down beside me. It's nice seeing you happy. It is nice, I agreed, being happy. It's strange, isn't it? How something so big, so overwhelming, can begin to feel small over time. In the beginning, it feels like it will swallow you whole, the weight of it. The pain, the realization that everything you thought was true is a lie. But eventually, you start to adjust. You start to fit into this new shape, this new version of yourself that has been formed from the wreckage of the past. I still have my moments, those nights when the weight of the past presses in, when I feel that familiar ache in my chest. But I've learned to live with it, to sit with it. I've learned that healing isn't about making the pain go away. It's about learning to live alongside it, to let it remind me of how far I've come. My mother is different now, stronger. She speaks at dinner, shares opinions, laughs without hesitation. She's in therapy, working through decades of silence and fear. She's becoming the person she might have been if she'd never met Gerald. Marcus and I have a tentative relationship. It's not close, it may never be, but it's real. He calls on my birthday, I call on his. We're learning to be siblings, 28 years too late. Rachel is my sister in every way that matters. We talk every week, see each other as often as we can. We're making up for lost time, building a relationship from scratch. It's not always easy, we're different people, shaped by different lives, but it's real. It's ours. And Gerald? He's still trying, still in therapy, still showing up slowly, imperfectly to family events. He's not the man I needed him to be when I was growing up, but he's trying to be better now, and that counts for something. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive him. I don't know if forgiveness is even the point. What matters is that I've stopped carrying his cruelty with me. I've stopped letting his doubts define me. I've stopped being the daughter he couldn't love and started being the woman I was always meant to be. The truth didn't make me whole. It just let me see that I always was. If you're watching this and something in my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like you were a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit, like the people who were supposed to love you couldn't see you, I want you to hear this. It was never your fault. It was never because you weren't enough. It was because the people who were supposed to love you were broken in ways that had nothing to do with you. I spent 28 years trying to earn my father's love. I got straight A's. I won scholarships. I stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed invisible. Nothing worked. Because his inability to love me wasn't about me at all. It was about him. You can't fix broken people by being perfect. You can't earn love from someone who doesn't have it to give. But you can stop trying. You can walk away. You can set boundaries. You can choose yourself. And when you do, something miraculous happens. You start to see that you were whole all along. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy trying to prove it to people who would never believe. Your worth is not determined by who sees it. It's not a number on a test or a seat at a table or a place in a photo. Your worth exists whether or not a single person on this planet acknowledges it. It took me 28 years to learn that lesson. I hope it takes you less time. But however long it takes, however messy the process, however many people try to convince you that you're wrong for protecting yourself, keep going. The truth will set you free. Not because it makes everything better, but because it lets you stop pretending. And that's the only way to start living. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever known, somewhere deep, that something was wrong, but couldn't let yourself see it? Have you ever had to face a truth that changed everything you thought you knew about yourself? Have you ever walked away from family? Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel a little less alone, a little more seen, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't land with you, tell me why. I'm not afraid of different perspectives. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you want more stories like this, stories about people finally choosing themselves, finally setting boundaries, finally reclaiming the narratives that were stolen from them, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. There are plenty more stories to tell. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, the truth doesn't make you whole. It just lets you see that you always were. Now go live your life. It's the only one you've got. I'll see you in the next one.